screen. Okay, so let me welcome you on our next SIG Core meeting. I see a lot of new people here, so just a kind reminder, put your name under the attendees list and be aware that our meeting will be recorded and then uploaded to Kyma YouTube channel. On today's agenda, we have a lot of nice things. So at the beginning, we'll start with answering questions from our community. Then there will be a short community update to say on which conferences will you find the Kyma community crew. Then Corbinian will show us the overview about function controller. And next, I can already spoiler that we will have a really nice demo about new GitHub and Slack connectors in Kyma. Then Lukasz Gornicki will talk a little bit about AsyncAPI support in Kyma. And last but not least, Michał Chudy will share with us the details about strategy for upgrading API version in Kubernetes resources. So let's start with the first one. So questions from community. I know that we have PB here, so probably he will answer those questions. And let me read the first one. So what is a Kyma runtime?
The answer is simple. So Kyma runtime is another name for a Kubernetes cluster that is running Kyma in it. Yeah. So this is just the name for Kubernetes cluster, and we use that mainly in Compass component, which is supposed to be somehow the component that is managing many Kyma runtimes. So you can imagine that you have more than one installation of Kyma, more than one cluster. You can have one cluster per customer, probably, maybe different scenarios for different environments. And you want to manage application connectivity in one place. And cluster is something that is not maybe something permanent. You can have new one, you can delete it, you can create it as you need. And then we came with the name of Kyma runtimes to have somehow notion of this item we can manage in Compass. So Compass actually is using these Kyma runtimes to assign some applications, some application connectivity to some runtime. So you can imagine that you have some on-premise services, cloud services, and you want to connect them to different Kyma instances, and this is the name. I hope, do we have Ian in the call?
I think that we have. Yeah.
So let's ask
I'm here.
if I answered.
Yeah, no, well, it's a good, yeah, definitely, yeah.
Okay, yeah, so if it is clear, then yeah, I will stop, yeah.
There's definitely enough to be thinking about.
And as far as I know, we have some documentation that it's explaining that, right?
Yeah, probably we have. Yeah, so it is inside of Compass, probably in some architecture thing. But to be honest, I haven't prepared it yet. So yeah, let me put maybe the answers in the SIG core later.
Okay, that will be good. So maybe we can start with the next one. Is there a Compass demo on the horizon?
I think that's not a question to me, maybe more to PK, who is not in the call, but I think that we will have soon something that is really usable, and we will present it also on this meeting in the SIG core. But I'm not sure if it will be next week or in 2 weeks or in 4 weeks.
So sooner or later we'll have it.
Yeah, yeah.
Good to know.
So yeah, you can actually start playing with it, but yeah, this is still work in progress. So yeah, definitely, it's not an easy thing to start. It is still incubator. It's still not finished. So you can expect some problems running it, but it's more or less working. Yeah. So we did some demos with it. And if you are interested, you can start and you can ask in the Slack channel for help if you face some problems. Anyway, we will face them again when we are live with it. So the sooner the better.
Good. The last one, any advice on how to run general workloads in a Kyma cluster?
I need, yeah, you, Ian, to maybe elaborate a little bit.
Yeah, but basically, I have like a shop front, right? And I'm basically building a little application proxy that allows me to, like, the application part that's going to talk to Kyma. And I'm like, oh, well, where do I host that? Do I put that on like a cloud function, or do I put that on a VPC or somewhere else? Or can I just run that as a container within the Kyma cluster that's already in front of me and I'm already managing, you know?
Yeah, so definitely you can run it inside the Kyma cluster. This is where it is supposed to be. So if you have any workload for that is extension for your application, the Kyma cluster is the right place. Of course, you can use some external hosting, but this is not the first scenario we thought about. Yeah, so when we thought about Kyma and the extensibility scenario, is that you want to have something like Kubernetes, some cloud native environment. You can benefit from auto-scaling, you can benefit from all this observability, monitoring, etc. And you want to run your workload in such environment, not necessarily in the environment that is brought to you with the application you extend. Yeah, so that's our main motivation to bring it to the Kubernetes. We do not hide Kubernetes, and Kubernetes workload is the way to go. Right now you have two options. So you can write Lambda function, which is currently based on Kubeless, but it will be soon replaced with Knative and serving. And the second option is regular deployment. So you can deploy your container, whatever you have, and you can also bind it to the application. You can trigger it with the events. So that's the two options you have right now. And the third option, that to host workload outside of Kyma, is also possible, but it's not something that we actively encourage or support. Yeah, but on the roadmap, we will have something that that will allow you to put maybe some workload in the functions provided by the cloud hyperscalers. But this is not in the stage that we can talk too much about it. I hope.
Yeah, that's cool. Thank you.
Any other questions from you, Ivan? Okay, I guess not. So the next question is from Holger. He's not on our call, but he asked that question in context of Kyma CLI, of provisioning Kubernetes cluster using Kyma CLI. And the question was, what about heading in the direction of cluster API, which the different providers for already many clouds? Basically, I think that he's asking why we choose Terraform instead of Cluster API. So Cluster API, for those who don't know, is a project under Kubernetes 6 organization, and basically it aims to provision also cluster using own API, but on GCP, Azure, and other hyperscaler side. I discussed that and asked people behind our Kyma CLI project, and answer was quite simple. The Cluster API is not robust enough for now. Basically, you can see even in their documentation that they are saying it's a prototype stage, and that was the main reason why we choose more production version like Terraform. But what is important is that Terraform implementation inside Kyma CLI has been done as a plugin. So we can implement more operators. So in future, we can add support for Cluster API. And this topic is not closed, right? So we have some extensibility here. I see also a new question from John. If you want to have development, staging, production, does that mean different namespace in one cluster or multiple cluster?
I can answer as you wish. Yeah. So
Yep.
and as you can afford for. Yeah. So if you can afford for multiple clusters and have separate cluster per each environment, of course it's better. Yeah. So it's better separation, but it's more expensive. Yeah. So usually people do dev, staging, test in one cluster using separation per namespace. And most people are rather avoid having production cluster shared with other environments. Yeah, so usually you have separate cluster for production, and for other environments you can have one shared cluster with different namespaces. That's what most people do.
Yeah, and basically just you are running Kyma on Kubernetes cluster, so it applies the same rule like you will use for Kubernetes itself, right? So I think that better is to use the dedicated cluster for production, because in the staging and development you can kill, for example, API server and things, and because of that you will have some downtime. So I think better and way is to have different clusters.
Mm-hmm. At least I wouldn't put developers on the production clusters to experiment with some nasty code. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's true, because you will share the control plane. Okay, so any other questions? Okay, so let's go to the next item, community update. Lukasz, your turn.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so we just wanted to share with you that we will be present at those two conferences mentioned in the meeting notes. So in case you would like to meet with us or even have a dedicated session showcase of Kyma, then you can let us know. So in case of API Specifications Conference, that's a conference in Canada happening in October. And I'm the one that is going there to present there. So if you'd like to have me even at your company to do some lunch talk about Kyma, just let me know upfront so I can plan and prepare. And if it comes to KubeCon, we already confirmed that we will have few people joining KubeCon. It's going to be me, without my daughters for sure. It's going to be Mateusz that is moderating this meeting, and he will also share some responsibilities related to his presence as a chair in the SIG service catalog. It's going to be Ahmed running the Knative initiative from our side and also doing the notes at the moment. There will be also Pavel that was also recently presenting on Cloud Native conference in Warsaw. And there's going to be also Piotr Kopczynski, who is a product owner behind Compass. So we are also open to do any additional presentations there, regardless the KubeCon. We already actually had one discussion with one local meetup about Cloud Native. We got accepted. We will have 4 sessions as far as I remember. So 1.5 hours just about Kyma. So yeah, long story short, we're there in North America. If you want to have us involved in your projects, let us know.
Good, thank you very much. Any questions? Okay, good. So next topic, overview about function controller. Corbin, you can proceed.
Yep, then I'd like to share my screen. So, the function controller. Why did we change something? First question, Yeah, this was the first question. So the idea to change from the current implementation based on Kubeless to a now based one on Knative is that we get scale to 0 out of the box with the new one. Also, we wanted to leverage the faster startup times that could be achieved using Knative serving. And obviously, yeah, we want to base as much as Kyma on Knative. And so we want to base it just on Knative and use its modular design. That's the reasoning behind the switch. Now a quick architecture overview on how it will look. So we will have the Lambda UI as we have currently. Then the Lambda UI basically creates somehow a Knative service. The code is somewhere stored either in a blob storage or this Git part. Go back. Wait, go back. Or in a Git repository. This is not implemented yet, but today we decided that we at least want to try to release this in the next release. Then as soon as the code is stored somewhere, then we trigger a build. Currently, the first implementation was implemented using Knative build, but as Knative build is now deprecated, we switched to Tekton. This builds then a full-blown Docker image with all the code and all the runtime features that you require to run the function, pushes it to a Docker registry, and then Knative serving takes over and runs the image with all the benefits of Knative serving, like scale to 0, as said. So what we did so far is we have something working. So we build images using Tekton. We have our initial CRD specification, and we run our functions using Knative serving. And I think then it would make sense to just show you something. So here I have my little cluster. In this cluster, I don't have anything except for I installed just the default Knative release. Currently, it's based on Knative 0.9, our function controller. Kyma comes now with Knative 0.8, I think. So on top of Knative, I installed also Tekton as we required for the build, and that's basically it. I did not put it in a full-blown Kyma installation for this demonstration because we have a little problem going on with the scale to 0. It scales down pretty good, but never scales up again. But this will be fixed in the future. So then obviously I prepared a function. So as you can see, you specify as you did for the old Kubeless-based implementation, you specify your function code in this function field. You could add dependencies. We will support sizes. That's something that we will support later on. We will also support different content types, and you can specify currently different runtimes. We configure out of the box Node.js 8 and Node.js 6, and that's it. So then what you need in your namespace, currently we have not decided yet if we will support only one namespace to build everything, or if every namespace will be build enabled, and how we do the Docker credential management. But for now, we configure one namespace, and there you can build your functions. To do that, you need to set up a service account. Quickly check this. So this service account is referenced in our function controller configuration. And it basically just contains your Docker credentials, because currently in Kyma, you don't have a Docker registry in Kyma, so you need to authenticate against something external. So once this is there, then you also need some Docker files, because as I already mentioned, all the images will be built using, they will be built using Docker files on Canico in the cluster. So as you can see here, there's no magic going on. It's just a normal Docker file. This is one for Node.js 6, one for Node.js 8, and it just differentiates between the base images. That's it. You can specify as many Docker files as you want if you have special needs. So then let's apply our function. So, okay. So this is our function that is that was created. If we check what it did in the background, is it creates a task run for Tecton. This is currently running. Once this is done, it will create the image, push it to my private Docker Hub account, and start a Knative serving. So as you can see, there's already a lot of stuff created. So we have now the successful build. We have our successfully running function. And let's try to curl it. And it responds as expected. So if I don't hit it now with traffic, then it scales down to 0 using the standard Knative serving configuration. And later on, it will scale up again. But I don't think that's worth showing here. Then let's go back here. And then there was questions about our plans for the future. So currently, as you have seen, we are not fully integrated into Kyma. Basically, we are not integrated into Kyma at the moment. So we don't have a UI, we can't support service bindings yet, and you cannot expose functions running on the function controller using API objects. So that's the first thing that we need to do. And the next plan would then be to support Git integration so that you don't have to modify the function CRD every time you do a code update, but you can just reference a GitHub repository and your function would be rebuilt once you push there. And I think that's it. So if you have any questions, then go ahead.
Okay, so maybe one question from my side. I saw that you have build pack for Node.js, and are you planning to add build pack for Go by default or not?
That's a question that I would really like to hand over to Ahmed. I think it would be easy to implement it, but I don't know if we want to implement it.
Exactly, that was the question.
That's a good feature request to have. I don't see a reason why not.
Because right now I'm lacking that feature in current Kyma, right? Yeah, in Kubeless. It's probably doable, but we don't have it, so I just...
To be honest, with the proper Docker file, you can already do it. You just need the correct base image and some magic in the Docker file, and then it works.
But basically, we are a Kyma platform which use heavily Go, and also we are working cloud native world. So yeah, I think that support for Go should be something to consider.
Yep.
Yeah.
I have another question. So you mentioned that you haven't decided yet if it will be one namespace for building or many. And I think that we should always have the principle that you can use many namespaces with which are which can be used for building these functions. Yeah.
Yeah. As I mentioned, currently with the current implementation and with what we specify in the README, you can do it in each and every namespace, but it's only for one namespace. You have to do the steps for each and every namespace that you want to build in. But later on, we might just do this automatically for you.
Okay. I just wanted to ensure that you not give up this feature that you can have separate.
Don't give up on that.
Okay, good.
So I have another question. So during your demo, you basically the Docker image was pushed to Docker Hub, right?
Yes.
And what's your view on it for production? So, I mean, do you plan or do you see it in the way that at the end it's pushed to the registry local in the cluster instead of going to some?
My personal opinion is that I hope that we will never have a private Docker repository in Kyma, rather than have a secure, publicly reachable Docker repository. But
there were discussions about it, yes, for sure, because
exactly
for the pros and cons for both, they have an opinion, and we didn't decide finally on that. So this is probably one of the discussions that is coming very soon. So when we have there is even an issue on Kyma for doing this Docker registry investigation, and there was an initial one that was made, but we still need more discussions on it, even with the community and stuff, because one of the point of view there for the pro having a Docker registry is that if you back up your cluster and restore it, then you restore everything, including your Docker images. But one of the also valid points on the other side is that the Kubernetes cluster is a set of configurations plus Docker images that are available there. So if the Docker images are on the same cluster with the configuration, that might be not a desired behavior. So maybe you want to store your Docker images separately from your cluster, and then you boot the state from somewhere else. So have separate backup lifecycle, I would say.
And just to add to this, currently with the current implementation, you are not limited to Docker Hub only. So you can basically use whatever Docker registry you want to use that's publicly available.
So there is an issue. I will put it in the README and the meeting minutes about this Docker registry, and feel free to discuss over it also. Because we didn't reach a conclusion from somewhere yet. It's a bit need more consensus or more discussions.
I think that in this particular case, it would be important to involve maybe like the users that we already have. Like maybe I would talk with Netconomy guys, or someone, because at the end, I mean, I would imagine that some customer can say that he doesn't have a external registry and he just wants to take something from us.
Yeah.
Then I'll just, like I said, paste the link, and then I'll make sure that whoever I know in the community already is using Kyma to ask them to share their feedback.
Okay, will do.
Any other questions? Okay, if not,
really nice explanation.
Yeah, that was really nice demo. So thank you, Corbinian. And now it's time for the next demo about GitHub and Slack connectors. So Julia, stage is yours.
Thanks. I will just share the screen and then tell you something. Give me a second. Okay. Do you see Google Chrome? Yeah.
Yep, with diagram.
Super. So I want to show you what Team Flying Seals, a group of 6 interns, have done during last 3 months. We have prepared 2 connectors for Kyma, one for Slack and one for GitHub connector, for GitHub. You can install them through Helm chart or through an add-on in Kyma. They both register in application registry. They have API specification in Open API standard and event specification in AsyncAPI standard of both Slack and GitHub. We provide the specification for all events. During installation, you provide token and secret for those services, so you don't have to care about authorization later. The connectors also expose endpoints on which Slack or GitHub can send events. What's more, GitHub creates a webhook. GitHub connector creates a webhook on GitHub automatically, so you don't have to do it manually on every repository you wish to handle. And you can handle, of course, many repositories at once. You can create one connector per token. You don't have to create many instances of it. But the installation of connector, it's just a service activation. It adds a service class in Kyma, so later you need to create an instance to be able to handle events and use application gateway. We have also created a scenario which uses these connectors. It labels an issue on GitHub that is offensive and sends a notification to Slack, so community manager can manage this issue, tell something to the creator. So on this chart you can see the flow. So when a new issue occurs on GitHub, the event is sent to GitHub connector, which wraps the event to a format which is acceptable by Kyma. Then it's forwarded to event bus, and Lambda, which we created, subscribes this event and sends the issue body and title to Azure Text Analytics, which analyzes it and sends back the sentiment of it. If it's too low, then a notification is sent to Slack and a label is put on the issue on GitHub. You can install the whole scenario with an add-on which we prepared, and it's just one click. You don't have to copy and paste the code and many other things. It's really easy. So let's see it in Kyma. You can see that we have add-ons for Slack connector, for GitHub connector, for scenario. They have a documentation explaining how to install it, explaining the fields you need to fill. You can add it here. There is one plan. You can provide many repositories or organizations. I have installed them before because it takes a while. To install the scenario, you have to add the Slack connector, GitHub connector, Azure Service Broker, and the rest of magic will be done by this add-on. So it creates a service instance of the connectors. It creates a Lambda, which already subscribes the issue event, which has the whole code inside, dependencies, service binding, the channel name, because you can specify during the installation on which Slack channel you would like to send the notifications. And thanks to those service binding, you don't have to worry about the authorization in the Lambda's code. As you can see, it's really short. It has 110 lines of code, so it's not that much. And let's see it in action. When you create an issue on GitHub that is offensive, you should get a notification on Slack, but oh yeah, it is here. Can you see it, or can you see Slack?
No, notification is not visible.
Okay, so maybe I first show you the label. When we refresh the page, the label caution offensive appears, and I have to change the screen share. So give me a second. Okay, you can see that message. There is a author, the title, the body, and link, of course. So that's it. That's all from me. That's how it works. Maybe you have some questions.
Yeah, I do. Can you just show me where you're hosting that? Oh, so you've got the connector. Where are you hosting it?
It's hosted inside Kyma. It's the connectors are services written in Go. So they handle an endpoint, and that's all. Yeah, it's just a pod in Kyma cluster.
Okay.
Maybe this is more interesting. Do you have this repository with add-ons somewhere published that you can share the link with community? How to enable that scenario in
of course
own cluster? Yeah, so I think that would be interesting also for you.
The add-on is on Kyma Incubator Hack Showcase in folder add-ons, and there is an index for connectors and index for scenario. So you can paste it in Kyma and you try it at home.
Thanks.
Thank you.
There is also documentation of the connectors, so you can read something about it, how to install them.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, so thank you very much, Julia. Really nice demo and really well explained. So what we can do, we can just go further. And once again, it's time for our own Lukasz Górnicki to say something about AsyncAPI supporting Kyma.
Hello again.
Again.
Let me share my screen. This time you should not expect a good demo. Sorry. Just to not raise expectation. So AsyncAPI 2.0. Before I go into demo and actually show the stuff that we did, I have to give you some context so you can actually understand whatever I'm showing in the CLI. But first info, most important, is that whatever I'm showing now it's built on a cluster. The cluster is built on a latest master, which means whatever I'm showing is going into the release next week. So here you can see a Lambda UI in Kyma, and one of the functionalities that we are proud of in Kyma is that it's not only easy to write such a function, doesn't matter if it's running on Kubeless now or later on Knative, but it's also the usability, how easy it is actually to bind to some service and also to subscribe it to some event. And in the UI, you do it just like by selecting a trigger, event trigger, and then you get a model with list of events. The other cool stuff about that you can see in the UI is also that somehow magically we know what events, not only what events you have, but also you can select a particular event, and then we generate for you a example payload, so you can test your Lambda from the UI without really going into your real application to test your code. And these magic things like this drop down, this listing and everything, it's all thanks to the fact that we adopted in Kyma the AsyncAPI spec. And AsyncAPI spec is a specification to document your events that are sent by your application. So now this information in the UI, it comes from the, actually, you have to excuse me for a second. Excuse me. I had to send my kids away from home. Now I'm back. So you can, this whole functionality comes from AsyncAPI, and long-term, the issue that you can see here is that you can do those things. You can have this discovery of events and example payloads. It's only possible with the UI because it's handled by the UI backend. We want to change it, but first we wanted to adopt the latest specification because we didn't want to invest in the old spec that will not be adopted by community. And to make sure that it all works, the people that upgrade Kyma, that already use it, and they already integrated with Kyma with the old specification provided in the version 1.10, 1.12, we wanted to make sure that the introduction of the AsyncAPI 2 is as seamless as possible. So that's what I'm going to show you, that we provided a special service that is doing conversion of the specification that you register into Kyma. So for you, it's super transparent. You just can register whatever spec you want. At the end, we make sure that it's converted into the latest version. And we also added additional feature that was requested by community, that we also validate the spec. So you can actually, from Kyma, learn upfront that something is wrong with your specification when you register. Now, the demo is based on the two mocks that I've registered. So the application, excuse me for a second. Okay, because that's an emergency, can we pause for a second? Michał would continue, and I'm back with you in like a few minutes. I would appreciate it. Mateusz? Michał?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. Could you hear me, or?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I have to drop off for a few minutes, and so Michał, let Michał continue with his proposal.
Okay, no problem. Okay, yeah, we can switch and then back to you. Okay, the question is how to stop sharing Lukasz screen.
Maybe I will try to share my screen and we see.
Maybe just a second.
If you go into the view options, you can request remote control.
That's a tricky thing. I don't see any. Oh, okay, but he's back. Lukasz, do you hear me? Man?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, because you had screen sharing, so
I can already continue back again.
You can continue. That's good.
Yeah.
So let's go.
Okay. Thanks a lot for your patience, and excuse me. So I have those two applications, and what I did, I registered them, which means I also provided specs for two of them, but one the one for C4C is provided with the AsyncAPI 1.0 spec, and the one ECMOC, it's provided with 2.0, which is also broken. So just to, now let's go to the CLI, which is less nice. Okay. Can you see a terminal?
I can see.
Okay, awesome. So now what I'm doing is that I'm checking the details of a cluster docs topic that was created by the application connector when I was registering the application mock. And just you need to remember that the Headless CMS component that we invested in this release to make this to have this functionality, at the end underneath it creates an cluster asset resource, which is part of the asset store, another component of ours that is taking the spec, and thanks to a proper configuration knows if he has to do some additional operations with your file before it's stored in the in Minio in S3 like storage. So you can see that in case of this EC spec, I could see that the cluster docs topic status was, it was waiting. And in the cluster asset resource, I can see that the specifications that a specification that I tried to register, the status is failed. And thanks to the service that is integrated in an internally asset store asks the service to validate and convert, we know that I had an error in my spec, and I exactly know that there's a field that is required and I'm missing it. And I also know that there's a additional field that should not be there. And the reason is simply because I broke the spec by changing channels into channel. So we can see that, and as a result in the UI, when I go into the service catalog and the events service class, I don't see the specs generated and rendered. So I see that there's something wrong, something is not showing up in the UI. And then with the CLI, I can check the details in the resource that what's wrong with the specification. So that's the this bad scenario, but yeah, what's it if it's successful? So an application that integrated with Kyma, and they did it with the specification 1.0 specification. You can see that when I registered it, that's the location of the original file. And just to prove, let me open it. You can see that it is AsyncAPI 1.0. You can still see it, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So you can see that what I did, I registered 1.0. And now let me check the details of the asset that was registered. All is good. And the spec that at the end is registered and will be used inside Kyma for various different functionalities, that's AsyncAPI 2.0. And when I go to the UI, and I go to the details of this class, Cloud for Customer Events, I can see that the list of the events, it's visible, all the channels are displayed, and all of this, this is handled with the new component that we contributed to AsyncAPI, the React component that is rendering those channels in the in the UI. So just to summarize, we created the service to do the conversion and validation, and we also made a number of contributions to the AsyncAPI to make sure that they have a converter provided with written in Go, and we also have the proper components for the UI. So that would be all from my side. Do you have any questions to that part?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
Is the validator executed as part of the in the asset store? Is it, or is it executed external to? Like, is there a dependency on the asset store to get the validation? I guess is what I'm asking.
No. So the validation, the actual validation is done by a specific service that is exposing an API where you can ask the service to do the validation on or the conversion. What AsyncAPI, what Asset Store is doing, it's the architecture of the Async Store allows us to say, okay, in this particular asset, before you upload it to the S3 storage, you should call a specific webhook service, send the spec to the service, ask for validation or conversion, and then go back into the controller of the asset store, and then send the valid converted file or whatever to the S3. So to answer your question, the asset store is a must-have component because the implementation that we did in Headless CMS is using asset store. But the service itself, it can be used without Kyma even, and it's part of the Headless CMS component, and it's a standalone service that we will actually use also in the Compass to provide the same kind of functionality.
Cool.
So yeah, if there are no more questions, so just to give you a heads up, so. Of course, to have nice full-blown user experience at the end, I should already, you can imagine that the best would be if I would go here into EC, and before binding the application to my namespace, I already in this view should know that my spec is wrong, it's not working. But that's something we know about it, we want to fix it, but that's, again, yeah, Compass thingy that will address it with the really nice functionality that you can even edit the spec in the UI. But that's going to be part of the Compass demo in the future.
Nice, thanks, Ben. So the last thing on our agenda, proposal for upgrading API versions of Kubernetes resources. Currently it's a hot topic. So Michał, share with us your proposal.
Okay, let me share my screen. Yes, this one. Okay. Some time ago, I created some proposal about upgrading API versions of Kubernetes because, as you know, or maybe don't know yet, with Kubernetes 1.16, some API versions that were deprecated since, I know, Kubernetes 1.9 will be no longer served by API server and will be removed from Kubernetes. And unfortunately, we use that deprecated versions in Kyma, and we need to somehow upgrade to new API versions. Unfortunately, the API version field is immutable, so we cannot just edit it and update resource. The resource needs to be recreated. And I made some small investigation. I also asked on Kubernetes Slack how to handle it, but nobody answered it. I know that Lukasz asked on Helm Slack, and people just say, we don't care about it, we just recreate the resources, remove the old one, and create the new one. But we were thinking about something like the canary deployment, but it is okay when you work with deployment, stateful set on others, and you can just control the load with the service, but sometimes it is not possible. For example, in case of ingress, because every ingress will have its own IP address and you need to point your domain to that address later. So that will be complicated. And so I decided that the easiest way for us will be just like others in the pre-upgrade Helm hook, remove the old resources, and then just in the Helm chart, create the new resources. Thanks to that, we'll not have a problem with duplicated resources. We'll not have to take the time to investigate which resources can be duplicated. For example, old controllers created with Kubuilders were not ready to be multiple instances. Only since the Kubuilder 2.0, it is possible to have multiple instances of controllers. So for that controllers, it must have to remove all the instances. And here is the proposal. A deadline is probably next Monday for it, I think. And as I said, I propose to recreate instead of canary deployment. Any questions?
Basically, on the pre-upgrade hook, you want to always remove that object, or only there is a chance to update
I
that
will
resource?
only remove if the version created that is already in the cluster is different than a suggested version for that Kubernetes version. For example, you can see the short helpers for deployments. And if the version is smaller than 1.9, then we'll use apps fan1 beta 2. But if there's a newer version, then we'll use the new API version, apps version 2. And then in pre-upgrade hook, we just need to verify which version we use. If we use old version, then we'll remove it.
Okay, so it's remove the resources only in case if there is a chance to update that resource to a newer version, right? And will not, change it back even if you have a new version already, then it will not be reverted.
Do we support Kubernetes version before 1.9?
That's an example.
So it's not possible to install Kyma there. Just comment here, so we do not need this conditional here, I think.
Yeah, but for example, in case of ingress, but right now we don't have any ingress in Kyma, but the new version is available since 1.14.
Okay, then that is the case. Yeah, I just wanted to point that 1.9 is
but
really an ancient one. Yeah.
But important to notice here is emphasize clearly that it means that the upgrade process for the customer will cause downtime. So for us, we're gonna really have to make sure that we make all the changes in all the components, and Kyma has many of them, that we make sure that we do it in one release and don't cause downtime for next 2-3 releases. So that's a challenge. But next release we want to, because 1.16 was released recently, so the plan is for next month to prepare a pipeline for checking, to check Kyma against 1.16 using Hind. So once we have an automated pipeline, at least it's going to be easier to track the changes coming.
Yep. Any other questions? Okay, if not, then thank you very much for sharing that. And you said that this deadline is for next week, right?
Yes, next Monday.
Next Monday, okay, good.
Probably. One moment, this is in pull request. The date is, it's loading. Okay. And here is, 13.
Okay, good. So take in mind that you need to provide feedback before next Monday. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we already a little bit out of time, but the last thing on our agenda is Q&A. So do you have any questions regarding that we presented, or generic question about Kyma itself?
Then I can jump in quickly. I'll quickly share my screen
quickly.
Just to, quickly. I'm super quick. So just to follow up on Ian's question to show exactly where the magic happens. So when application connector creates a resource And I told you that at the end, we create cluster assets, and our cluster asset is calling the service. So he knows it. We know about it thanks to the approach that we have a config map for our headless CMS controller, that where we can specify that for a specific type of the source that it's processing, it must ask the asset store that when he's processing the file and saving to S3, he has to perform some validations and mutations, and we specify to which service from which namespace to which endpoint it has to call and ask for a particular action. So yeah, just a follow-up.
Okay, so thank you for attending our call meeting, and see ya in next 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, bye.
Thank you. Bye.